application continued from May 19th, 2015. HK Food Group 1030 LLC, doing business as Waypoint. Michael Scelfo, manager, has applied to renew all alcoholic beverages as a restaurant license at 1030 Mass Ave with proposed hours of operation from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Friday and 10:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. Saturday and Sunday with a proposed seating capacity of 145. Applicant is also applying for an entertainment license to include audio tape machine, CD, computerized digital media to be played below, at, or above conversation level and 2 TVs.
Good evening, Madam Chair. For the record again, James Rafferty on behalf of the applicants. And to my right is Michael Scelfo, S-C-E-L-F-O. Mr. Scelfo is one of the principals and the chef, owner, operator at this location.
Folks, we cannot stand in the doorway. I'm sorry. I understand it's difficult, but...
Madam Chair, when we were here last...
There's a spot over here if you want. You can stand over that side out of the... Sorry, Council.
No, we conducted a hearing on the application. You'll recall this, Mr. Scelfo is probably recalled by the Commission. He's the owner of the very successful Alden and Hollow restaurant in Harvard Square. His colleague, Brian Lesser, is present this evening as well. This is a proposed restaurant at 1030 Mass Ave and a office building opposite the intersection of Ellery Street and Mass Ave in the mid-Cambridge stretch of Massachusetts Avenue, just outside of Harvard Square. The premises is a business zone, and like many of the uses around here, the prominent use at the ground floor of these premises, retail or restaurant. This location was particularly appealing to the applicants because there was not a high percentage of sit-down dining establishments in this location. So we have submitted an application with a detailed floor plan and menus which chronicle Mr. Scelfo's history in the culinary world, the successes he's enjoyed at Alden Hollow, and his goal to bring similar quality dining to this location. On the night of the hearing, or shortly before the hearing, I should say, it became known to the applicant that the building itself at 1030 Mass Ave had concerns raised in the past few years around rooftop mechanical equipment associated with other uses in the building. My sense is that chiefly issues arose when the tenant mix in the building went from largely office to some form of R&D or lab-style uses. Several residents appeared at the last hearing and expressed concern primarily on the acoustical issues, and the matter was continued. The continuance was helpful for us because it allowed us to have 2 significant meetings. We hosted a meeting at the premises in late May, or early June, the date escapes me at the moment, but it allowed us an opportunity to invite the concerned residents on Green Street, and they're largely abutters who live behind the building, and sit down in the space and frankly walk them through with the floor plan the location of the various elements of the restaurant, including where the kitchen will be located, how the trash and deliveries will be handled, where the parking will occur. And the venue is well suited, I would suggest, for this type of operation because all of that activity is occurring internal to the building. The building is serviced by a below-grade parking facility that accommodates 60 motor vehicles, and the applicant will have use of that garage in the evenings. We had building management ownership present at the neighborhood meeting. They were able to answer questions about utilization in that garage in the evening hours, and their surveys show less than 15 spaces are being used at that time. The restaurant in its operational plans is only intended to be open for dinner, opening at 5 p.m. It's the schedule that Alden and Hollow files. They do anticipate being open for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays, so there would be an earlier opening. But the deliveries will occur in a loading dock located in that garage area. The trash will be brought to the same loading dock and then brought out to Mass Avenue, and it's picked up a couple of times a week from the Mass Avenue side. So unlike many establishments along that corridor of Mass Ave, where there's a close relationship and interaction between residential uses and commercial uses, this building really does have certain advantages. Having said all that, the neighbors shared with us the history of the building and particularly the rooftop mechanical equipment. We understand their concerns to be legitimate and significant, and they have been very accommodating in spending time with us, sharing with us their concerns. What we were able to conclude at the end of the hearing, at the end of the first meeting, is operationally showing neighbors how it would work, and particularly the area in the kitchen where the exhaust will occur. And as a result of that, Mr. Lesser and Mr. Scelfo went back and pre-designed, if you will, their exhaust system for the cooking in the restaurant. The air conditioning and ventilation for the restaurant will occur within the existing system, so there will not be any added acoustical activity related to the air conditioning. Admittedly, there will be an exhaust fan installed in a location where there currently is a window. And we reviewed that location, and we then, the applicants went and hired a sound engineer, a Centec, to go out and take measurements of ambient noise conditions, and then to work with the mechanical engineer to design a system that mitigates as much as possible the impact from the noise that this exhaust system would have. And this exhaust is related to cooking operations at the restaurant. And cooking, the restaurant will be open, the closing hours are alternatively between 11, 12, and 1 a.m. But the cooking during the week wouldn't occur much after 11 p.m. is Mr. Scelfo's estimate, and similarly on the weekends by midnight the cooking would stop. So any of the additional noise generated from the exhaust system would cease at that hour when there is not active cooking going on. But even more significantly is the report from a Centec, and we provided a copy of their most recent report today, that in the opinion of this professional engineer, there will not be any appreciable impact to the existing noise situation as a result of this exhaust system. It has to do with existing ambient and locations of the exhaust system. And we have shared that information. We had a second meeting with the neighbors a few weeks ago, and they were, again, very cooperative, and we appreciate the time they took to listen to us. I think there's been a good faith effort here to try to address concerns about the building. And at the moment, we're asking the commission to allow us to proceed with plans. We continued this hearing since May. We had originally thought we might be here in July, but it was our understanding that the neighbors wished additional time, and I'm not sure I understood that request accurately. But at any rate, we find ourselves in a position where it is necessary to go forward this evening and seek a determination by the commission. I don't mean to minimize the acoustical issues, because I know the neighbors deal with many acoustical issues related to this building, but I have to say in all candor that the source of acoustical discomfort that's being experienced in this building is not going to be affected by this restaurant use. And there are a series of other uses, frankly, that could occupy that space, which would not require license approval, that would certainly rival any amount of noise that would be generated from a kitchen exhaust fan. It is a commercial kitchen, but its location in the building and the manner in which the fan is being placed interior to the space, I think the commission could take note of the level of exchange between the butters and the forethought put into this by the operator. We're mindful of the issues associated with the issuance of a no-value license. We have tried to demonstrate public support by submitting over 190 signatures of Cambridge residents in support of the application. I would note that over 100 of those signatures are in very close proximity to the use in the neighborhood. In addition to the petition themselves, we broke them down according to streets. You'll note that Center Street, Dana Street, Ellery Street, Hancock Street, Harvard Street, Lee Street, Franklin Street, and Green Street all have significant signatures. Over 100 of the signatures provided are from those immediate neighbors. This restaurant will be an asset to the neighborhood. There are people who have been waiting to speak in favor of it tonight. I know there are other neighbors here, so I would conclude my comments at this point, other than to note that we did explore whether opportunities existed to acquire an existing license, and we have been unsuccessful. We're unaware of any existing restaurateur looking to sell the license, and we understand that's a relevant point of inquiry. This restaurant is totally restaurant focused. We've submitted a copy of the menu. And the reviews and experience at Alban Hollow would suggest that this is First and foremost, a dining destination. Mr. Scelfo's reputation is well earned. He's a James Beard award-winning chef. And there's been a high level of enthusiasm as we've been able to talk to people in the neighborhood about this. We're challenged by the building itself in terms of its acoustical impacts, and the applicant is committed to ensure that its presence in that building will not increase or aggravate that, and hopefully, in some ways, with renewed attention on this issue, it might even serve as a greater impetus to have a more long-term tranquility for these neighbors. But having said that, with the Commission's indulgence, I would stop talking and ask if the Commission might allow members of the public to weigh in.
Sure. Do you have any comment? Or would you like to reserve your comments to the end?
Sir, my comments.
Reserve your comments to the end?
Yes, please.
So can I get a show of hands first? How many people would like to speak on this application, whether in favor or in opposition? Okay. So what I'd like to do first, if I could ask you two to maybe sit back. I don't know if you still have seats. I'd like to start first with those people who were not at the May hearing, who were not able to speak then. So if you were here for the first time and you did not give testimony at the May hearing and you would like to speak now, if those people can come first.
I was not at the May hearing.
Fine.
Good, thank you.
And if I could ask everyone to please keep your comments to 2 minutes or less, otherwise we will all be here until midnight. That would be helpful.
I'll be very brief because I can enjoy myself. My name is Sam Thompson.
Sam, just got to spell your name for the record.
Sorry. My name is Sam Thompson. I live at 15 Cottage Street. SamThompson. My wife and I live at that address. We have 2 children. We've lived at this address since 2003. Have watched a decent amount of transformation across Mass Ave, but have found great value in a lot of the restaurants that have come into the neighborhood and welcomed another establishment. I think it's brought vibrancy to the street and brought in a crowd of people that makes living in this neighborhood enjoyable. I'm in full support of everything these guys are seeking to acquire when it comes to licensing and placing the restaurant at 1030 Mass Ave.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next person. Good evening. If you could please tell us your name, spelling your first name and last name, please.
It's Maureen, M-A-U-R-E-E-N, Anita, O-N-E-I-L. I live on Ellsworth Ave, in between Heairng and Harvard.
And if you could speak up so that
sorry.
people in back can hear you.
I came to this hearing to support one restaurant, and I found some friends in another, and I just wanted to voice my support for their license application and look forward to another great spot to have dinner and meet friends and enjoy the neighborhoods in Cambridge.
Great. Thank you. Good evening. Hi. If you could please tell us your name, please, spelling your first name and last name.
Stone, can I spell it?
Yes, please.
W-E-N-D-Y-S-T-O-N.
Okay.
I live on Green Street, probably about directly behind where there's not really except on the south side.
And if you could speak up, there are
Yeah.
people in back who are saying they
Okay,
can't hear
yes,
you.
I live
Thank you.
on Green Street, pretty much directly behind the restaurant. I was not at the meeting. I have 2 concerns, and I'll keep it very brief. One is the size of the restaurant and the amount, it's pretty quiet, the amount of noise and sort of foot traffic late at night that it could generate. I'm not sure about, like the number of cars, the number of foot traffic and parking, on Green Street behind us. I also just am a little concerned because I had first found out about this restaurant in May after the first meeting from a neighbor, and wrote to Mr. Rafferty and asked him if he would please inform me of any further meetings, and he said he would surely do so, but did not. So that makes me a little concerned about the veracity of what they're presenting. And, I would like to be able to, see and inquire about the noise report, more carefully.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Danielle McDonough. I'm an architectural designer.
Danielle, can you spell your
Oh,
full name,
sorry,
please?
D-A-N-I-E-L-L-E-M-C-D-O-N-O-U-G-H. I live at 991 Mass Ave, and I work needless to say, I spend a lot of time in this area, and I think that the amount of foot traffic that has increased because of storefronts being repopulated via Piara, via the Handlebar, has vastly increased the amount of safety, I feel like, in this area, but also just the general candor of neighbors amongst each other. You know, there's more foot traffic, and I think that having a Waypoint and a seafood restaurant would be a great addition to the neighborhood.
Great, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Susan Holcomb, Holcombe, and I live at 663 Green Street. I'm not an abutter, but my husband and I look up at 1030 Massachusetts Avenue from our backyard.
Okay.
I was not at the May 19th meeting. I was at the meeting that was hosted by the applicant, and I am impressed with the way in which they've, in general, tried to be concerned about the interests of neighbors and the impact upon neighbors. But I'm also very much aware of the issues of noise around 1030 Massachusetts Avenue. And I think that this is a major concern of people who live very close to it. I understand that they've made some efforts to try to reduce this noise. I think the concern of some of the neighbors is that we've not had a chance to look at their data. I'm not going to say a great deal more because some of my neighbors will say more in detail about this, but I think it would be very useful to have all the data so that this can be looked at by an independent acoustical consultant. I think it really is an issue that noise has a very big impact on people's lives, and there are other issues that one could go into, but that's the big issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Broderick McNeil, R-O-D-E-R-I-C-K-M-A-C-N-E-I-L. I live at 9 Ellery Street. I lived there with my girlfriend since 2007. I'd like to speak in support of this restaurant. I've had good experiences at both Scelfo restaurants in the area. They're very professionally run, they're quality restaurants, and I think it'd be a positive addition to the neighborhood. One thing I've observed living, at this location, which is about 50 yards from the proposed restaurant, is that I've seen far too many empty and vacant storefronts within a few blocks of this area over the years, and that's changed somewhat for the better the last couple of years. But I'd like to continue to see good, successful businesses opening and operating in this area. I think they add great value both to the neighborhood and to me as a resident.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ed Brody, E-D-B-R-O-D-Y. I live at 661 Green Street, directly behind 1030. I was at the May meeting, but I did not speak. I'm sure we'll hear more later about our community's desire to have an independent acoustical engineer analyze the plans that have been put in place. And I wanted to say, well, I thought that was important, and it's because this situation feels exactly parallel to the situation we had at 1030, where we were promised that the state-of-the-art equipment that they were buying would be whisper quiet, and that there was an acoustic engineer who had signed off on that, and it turned out to take almost a year for them to bring the amount of noise down to the ordinance, much less being whisper quiet. So I'm not doubting the best efforts of the applicant, but I think there's a good reason for the neighborhood to be concerned. In general, I feel with the issues of noise and of parking and of additional foot traffic late at night on Green Street, that the attitude of the applicant has been that it's noisy now and this won't make it much worse. The street is all parked up now and this won't make it much worse. And our opinion is that the situation is bad enough now that making it any worse at all will be a heavy strain on the neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? So now let me move to those who testified in May. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard in this matter? see a hand raised, please come forward. And if you could please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name, please.
If I face this way, people might be able to hear me because I don't
Sure,
speak well. Okay.
whatever your preference is.
Great. My name is Dina, D-E-N-A, Feldstein, F-E-L-D-S-T-E-I-N, and I live at 661 Green Street. And I'm going to read this quickly, but it's all written here, up to you.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. So you're going to read this into the record, which is fine, and then are you going to add comments afterwards, just being
No.
mindful of 2 minutes?
I'm going
Okay.
to say that for the record, which is not on here, the neighbors were prepared to have the second meeting with the applicants in mid-July. We never asked for the delay. We were informed by Ms. Lint that they were not on the hearing docket for July. And that I appreciate Mr. Rafferty's comments and his appreciation of our working with them. The building at 1030 Mass Ave is already at the limit of the legal noise level. Abutters and others already live with the constant penetrating noise, which impacts our health and enjoyment. I oppose any increase in building noise from any new business at 1030 Mass Ave. Any increase at all will exceed the city's legal limit. We have engaged in respectful decisions with the applicants of the proposed restaurant at 1030 Mass Ave. At the first hearing, everyone agreed the applicants should have held discussions prior to the first hearing. We have spent hours working on this in the hopes of an agreeable resolution. Unfortunately, the applicants did not follow through in a timely manner with information they agreed to give us, and now they want to push for approval. My key issues are, at the July 29th meeting, Jim and Brian agreed to give us the data and assumptions used by their sound engineer so we could get unbiased, independent analysis of the noise from the equipment and HVAC systems of the restaurant. They knew time was of the essence. They delayed doing this until yesterday afternoon, insisting on having their engineer speak directly to our acoustician rather than enabling our independent analysis. They had the data. It seems to me they wanted to derail or postpone our efforts. We have not been able to ascertain the validity of their engineer's assumptions and analysis. Residents other than abutters are also concerned about the noise, parking, traffic, etc. Jim Rafferty asked for and received a list of names of concerned residents in May. See the attached documents, whom he said he would keep in the loop.
I will let you finish.
He has not. I lost my place.
Sorry.
Wendy already spoke. Why has Jim not included her and the other residents whose names he received? The proposed restaurant is larger than any such establishment in our immediate neighborhood. We have every right to be concerned about the noise, traffic, parking, and other problems. The noise is my biggest concern, and I do not believe the applicant has proven that the restaurant's equipment and HVAC systems will not add to the noise from 1030 Mass Ave. We know from past experience with the HVAC system at 1030 Mass Ave that engineers can make mistakes. We cannot risk another mistake. In sum, I don't believe the residents or the License Commission have sufficient information to make a decision about the application at this time. It is critical for the License Commission to ensure that new developments do not negatively impact residents. As a result, at this time, I ask the License Commission to turn down the applicant's request or delay the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Sure. If you could please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name, please.
My name is Harriet Feinberg. That's Harriet, Feinberg. I live at 639 Green Street, directly behind 1030 Mass Ave. My house is probably the closest to where the exhaust fan would be between 1030 and the next building. I was hoping that we would have some kind of positive resolution of this matter, since obviously this is a very good restaurant and a lot of people are interested in it. However, like Dina, who just spoke, I feel uncertain about what the noise impact would be because because we have not been able to obtain our independent assessment by our own acoustician for reasons that seem rather complicated and I won't try to repeat. I am not so concerned, I've lived in Cambridge my whole adult life, I'm not so concerned about transient noise of, a few people out in the street and so forth. We have fire engines, we have police cars, we have everything. The thing I'm very concerned about is that if this goes ahead, we'll discover that there's a one of those hums that just goes on and on and on, and that will be very destructive to the well-being of the abutters. Now, it may not happen, but the problem is we don't know that it won't happen because we don't have our independent acoustician's report. And the whole situation arose because we were promised quiet when 10:30 was changed, and it didn't happen. And that is why we are all, frankly, hesitant to take anybody's word, not these particular restaurateurs who seem like very nice people, but anybody's word that would move in and say, oh, we're putting this equipment, it's going to be very quiet, you'll never notice it. We have heard that before. And therefore, at this time, I could not give a yes myself to this project. Thank you.
Right on cue. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? I've got someone else who's coming forward, so please. Good evening.
So I'm Philip Wellens, W-E-L-L-O,
Spell your first name.
P-H-I-L-I-P, one L. I-L-I-P, Wellens, two L's, W-E-L-L-O-N-S. What I'd like to do is focus in on what you've been hearing about already. The big issue for us are butters, when I'm on, I live at 651 Green Street, so I'm right behind the building. And the big issue for us is noise. And it's been a serious issue for us since the building changed to lab services, lab. Quite serious. So for us, the question is, will the equipment that the restaurant brings in add to the noise that we hear? And we've learned a little about acoustics and all of this, that just because there is additional sound, if it's quite low, it doesn't actually add to the noise that you hear, because what you hear is smothered by all the rest. It smothers all the new noise. So about on July 29th, we learned, and this is now 2 months after the hearing, the original hearing that we attended. We learned that the applicant had a study that showed the sound was actually quite low. The noise that would be produced was quite low. And it was a prediction. It wasn't based on actual sound tests. It was based on analysis. The question for us was, how can we be sure the predictions are accurate? For reasons you heard, that's a great concern to us because they haven't been accurate always in the past. So we figured we should get our own acoustics engineer, which we did. We had such a person. The idea was that he could evaluate the predictions made by the initial study. And
So I can give you 1 more minute, so if you could get to the heart of it, please.
okay, so let's we asked the applicant to give us the data that he would need to do his study. He needed the inputs that the first study used. And we asked them on July 29th at the meeting, and they said yes. We asked them on July 30th by email, and they said, we'll give it to you. We asked them on August 4th, and they said, well, they didn't actually answer at that point. The problem for us was your meeting was coming up a week, less than 2 weeks after the July 29th meeting. And we had to have this analysis completed. When did we get the data that we asked for? We never got it all. We got some of it the day before this meeting, yesterday. just yesterday, there was no way our specialist could do his work. That was quite unfortunate, because we hoped we would be able to come to you with our analysis, and it would be either looks good, confirming it, or we got some problems, and then we try to solve the problems. That's what you've been hearing about all this time. We need time for this fellow, for this expert, to actually evaluate the analysis that the previous acoustical engineer gave us. He can do it by Friday this week. We are actually that close. So we're asking you, what we'd like to do is to postpone your decision until our expert can do his job. And we can come back to you. And we could well come back and say, things look great. We could also come back and say, please fix this stuff. He's got to get the additional material for him to complete by Friday. And failing that, we ask you not to grant the application because we can't risk the possibility of more noise. That is the lay it out. Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you. Yes, I see a hand raised.
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Wellens, W-E-L-L-O-N-S. I live at 651 Green Street. I'd like to speak to this issue. To other neighbors who have spoken in favor of the restaurant, I'd like to say that we have initially hoped, as you do, that the proposed restaurant would be an asset to the neighborhood. However, as you've also heard, we have significant...
Please address the
I'm
commission,
sorry.
please. That's okay.
I'm sorry. So we also have other concerns because we are most immediately affected. And what Phil Wellens said was, we still don't know from an independent source what effect the proposed restaurant ventilation system will have on our noise level. Mr. Rafferty has forgotten yet again that the building is not an office building. It was converted to lab use. If you listen to lab HVAC systems, you will find that they are 24/7, and lights from the building are also 24/7, so that we are most immediately affected by what goes on there.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? I'm even going to pause your time since I want to ask a question. So when the building you said was converted from office use to lab use, did you note that the noise became worse at that time?
Absolutely, yes. It was intolerable. And we called the license commission, and Andrea Boyer came out, took noise readings. The building was noticeably non-compliant. The owners of the building met with us. They said they would remedy it. It took them 8 months, they said, they needed to install the equipment that they said would bring the building into compliance. And when they did so finally in August, I believe 2 years ago, there was an additional noise test, and at that point, the building was said to be compliant. Since then, I've taken readings with a handheld gizmo at property lines and on our back porch and everywhere, and it is marginally non-compliant. For example, at 10:15 a.m. on a Sunday morning, it was at 52 decibels at our property line. The ambient noise from other sources at that point is minimal, so that we are fairly certain that the building is non-compliant. And this is particularly important because if you look at what the restaurant operations actually will be and the hours, the license term ends when? When does it start? It starts at whatever hour, and it ends at 1 a.m. In fact, the cooking and preparation of food begin for such a thing for Saturday and Sunday brunch, we're told, at 7 a.m., which means that the new equipment that will ventilate and clean the air from the cooking will begin at 7 a.m. of a Sunday. Now, that is an exceptionally quiet time, even for Cambridge. So there is no reading of the ambient noise, or even the point source for that hour, to compare with what the projected decibel level for the new equipment is. Now, I don't know, because I haven't seen, whether we've been given the specifications, tables and schedules, and the design and plans for the HVAC system proposed for the restaurant. But we have hired, and you will need to pay our acoustician for time already spent with us, and we have all agreed to chip in to pay for the acoustician's analysis of the full set of data that we have requested repeatedly from the applicants and that has not been forthcoming. As you may know, they have said that our acoustician and theirs should get together and settle this, and it's hard not to believe that this is not an attempt to steer the whole process to their desired outcome, regardless of what the readings actually may be. We know from our acoustician that it is not a pure science, that a lot depends on what your assumptions are. For example, do you take a reading at a point in time or over a week, for example? How well do you understand what the origin and the pattern of noise will be? So going back to the operations of the restaurant, on weekends when it's most quiet in our neighborhood, even with the lab building, they propose to begin work adding the noise from their fan. And at night, I understand from reading the state law and Cambridge regulations that the licensee, employees, contractors, subcontractors, cleaners can be on the premises at any hour. For example, if the PCU, the pollution control unit over the cooking thing, is not operating properly and they need to repair it in time for the brunch the next day, or even the night, they could well be in there testing the equipment in the middle of the night, even when the license says, you know, ordinarily there's no alcohol served. In addition, I meant to say at the beginning that we learned from a prior hearing here tonight that there are lots of other hazards associated with restaurants. I guess we believe that the applicants are well practiced in safety, fire, and sanitation and other requirements. But I don't want you to diminish or discount the effect of noise as a health hazard. And so we, I believe, have a reasonable cause to ask, at minimum, for a delay in your decision, pending what we think is a reasonable request for our acoustician to look at their data, full set as he's requested, or failing that you deny the license. I'm sorry that the applicants are calling the question, because we have, in a sense, wasted a lot of time dealing with this among ourselves. You know, we're not a corporation. We do different things. One of our neighbors is in Canada right now, and my neighbor Dina Brody, I meant to ask at the beginning of my talk, would like to come read the email that Carol Monica has sent. She spoke at the prior meeting, but she has an email that she sent. So it just going, for example.
If I can get you to
Yes?
wrap up, I've given you an extra
All right,
2 minutes.
thank you, I realize
We're at
that,
the
and I
end.
appreciate it. So, we noticed from one of the memos that we got from the applicants that their acoustician says that they have made reasonably quiet fan selections for the PCU. We don't know why they aren't outright quiet fan selections. We don't know what reasonably quiet fan selections are. So I think, I'm sure to remember other things that I hope to say, but I ask you either to continue this or to deny the thing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
It's up to you.
Our neighbor,
I'm sorry, it's up to you whether you let me read a short note.
if
from
you can
Carol
forward
Monica.
it in, we can include it in the record, absolutely though.
Okay.
Was it already sent? Because if
She-
it was, it would
We
be
received
here.
lots of emails.
She sent it to me and Phil this evening because she had It's like 3 little paragraphs.
That's fine. If you could please again identify yourself for the record.
My name is Dina, D-E-N-A, Feldstein,
Tina, come on over here.
F-E-L-D-S-T-E-I-N, at 661 Green Street. And I'm speaking on behalf of Carol, C-A-R-O-L, Monica, M-O-N-I-C-A, at 643-645 Green Street. And in brief, my name is Carol Monica. I've owned 643, 645 Green Street since 1970 and have owned and operated a store in Harvard Square, the games people play, for over 40 years. I think I am a dedicated Cambridge restaurant. Our small neighborhood has had a problem with 1030 Mass Ave for many years. The noise from their venting is a 24/7 assault, as is the lights left on at night from their various floors. I have a beautiful home and cannot leave the windows open at night. I have a beautiful garden and cannot enjoy it peacefully during the day. The management of 1030 Mass Ave listens to our complaints, smiles and does nothing. Now they want to add a restaurant open till 1 a.m. weekly and start working on Sundays at 7 a.m. for brunch. The petitioners have been unable to provide their argument, have been unable to prove that occupancy will not add to the already too loud sounds coming from the building. The city seems unable to deal with the violations of the sound ordinance. Your commission is our beleaguered neighborhood's only hope. I beg you to deny this application. Sincerely, Carol Monica, and I will forward it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that was all the hands that I saw. Councilor, there's a chance to come back.
Well, as I stated earlier, Madam Chair, the applicant is extremely appreciative of the time that the residents have spent with us on this issue. We share the regret that we're not here in agreement at this moment. But there was just one characterization about the exchange of information that I would like to correct, because none of the speakers mentioned a memo August 6th. There was a follow-on report from a Centec that I believe I provided a copy of to the commission that was sent to the residents, and I believe it may not have gotten to them until August 8th by email. But this was the memo that followed on the July 29th meeting, where Mr. Lesser asked his acoustical sound engineer to please respond to certain questions raised in the July 29th report. And it has 2 points. It speaks to decibel addition, and the second point too says, how were the predictions made? So this information was provided. Now, there was much talk about the fact that yesterday additional information was given. But if one weren't paying careful attention to the paper trail here, one might think that there was no information provided between July 29th and yesterday, and that simply is factually incorrect. After disseminating this memo, we did hear back on Friday that the memo didn't have the requested details, so we asked for additional information, and that was provided on Monday. But in addition, throughout all of these exchanges, what's been very prominent in the email exchanges between Mr. Lesser and chiefly Mr. Wellens has been a willingness to have our sound engineer get in touch directly. And I want to assure the Commission and the neighbors that is not an effort to hold back information or disseminate information. There are just two issues that bear attention. One is the noise being generated at the roof of the building is related to air exhaust associated with the uses in the building, not the restaurant. And that's been a long-standing source of concern, and we understand that. This restaurant will be using an existing HVAC system. There's nothing about the restaurant being here that's going to change the activity associated with the HVAC system. It's an internal system in the building. The sound engineer has reported. The only new noise being created will be kitchen exhaust. And restaurants all over this city have exhausts, and they're located in a range of areas in close and sometimes very close proximity to residential uses, and those noises can be mitigated. And our effort has been to try to get the focus on this, what's called a PCU, pollution control unit, which is, in this case, a highly engineered system that reduces odors, handles grease, and really, in this case, is geared towards acoustical issues. The applicants, through their contractor, searched in the greater Boston area to find the best unit, and they found that a recent restaurant in the Boston Park Plaza Hotel introduced this system because the hotel had concerns that residents or hotel guests in the hotel were not disturbed by this venting system. And this is the system. They use CAFCO as their contractor, mechanical engineer. This is the system they sourced. This is the information we shared in our meeting. So there has been a significant amount of exchange over this, and we are appreciative and understand that. We simply had pragmatic limitations on time associated with the landlord, and our focus has been that we understand the acoustical issues. It is an issue for people who live in close proximity, but I think the commission has had experience with ventilation equipment associated with cooking equipment, and I don't think there's anything to suggest, in fact, evidence is significant to the contrary, that that equipment is going to impact what's being experienced. And that's what we've tried to say, why don't we let the acoustical professionals speak to each other so we can drive home that point. Now, having said all this, there has been nothing unreasonable about the neighbors throughout this entire process. And I regret that we're here tonight requesting a vote, and it would appear that somehow is an indication that the neighbors have acted unreasonably. That isn't the case. We're facing other pressures, and we're asking the commission to take note of the fact that this is an issue that is eminently solvable. The latest change that we shared with the neighbors at our second meeting in the premises was the engineer's selection of locating the unit itself at the furthest point from the source of egress for the sound, the exterior wall, so that the fan and that equipment is as far away, so it limits the amount of noise. Will there be some noise? We did share the fact that we were asked at the meeting, well, the noise is only generated when the cooking is going on. Well, we don't cook. When do you start cooking? Well, on days when we have brunch, Mr. Scelfo did say 7. We since talked about it and said, you know what? We still think it won't be heard, but we could live with and would accept 8 a.m. The cooking equipment will not be turned on before 8 a.m. on the days in which brunch is being served, particularly on Sunday morning. But there are countless restaurants located in residential buildings, close proximity to residential districts that are able to effectively manage this noise. And we're saying at this point, we feel we have addressed that. We hope we have done so adequately. We've done so respectfully and with a full exchange of information. We'll continue to exchange that information. We're a ways from building out the restaurant, but commitments are being pressed upon us by the landlord, and we're asking that the commission be able to conclude that they have enough information to allow us to at least proceed. There are opportunities for monitoring, for further engagement. I just felt, we felt at this point that we needed to bring the issue to the Commission's attention at this time. And we regret that there hasn't been, in some eyes, an adequate exchange of information, but all the information we have has been shared, and there's never been an effort here to do anything but be forthcoming. And we're hopeful that the testimony provided by other witnesses, the public support demonstrated by the signatures, the petitions, the letters written to the commission, there are, by my count, 15 letters from very close residents. It's a building that has a problem, admittedly, with mechanical equipment associated with other uses in the building. That certainly warrants close attention to any additional noise, and we would respectfully suggest that we have met that standard in the way we've approached any possible noise impacts from our exhaust system. Thank you.
Council, if I can just follow up on one thing that you said. You said that there would be opportunities for further engagement. What did you mean by that?
Well, we're committed, and we'll continue to meet with the neighbors, to share with them this information, to make the acoustical consultants available, to have as good an understanding as possible about the concerns. We learned a lot about the building from the residents. We learned that they endured a lot of noise when it was a grocery store. When Barsamians was there, they shared with us they had walk-in coolers and refrigerators in the garage, and they went 24 hours. This is a different kind of a use. So Mr. Scelfo and Mr. Lesser remain committed to remaining in close contact. There are some residential structures that are relatively close here. We learned about a pedestrian access point that I think we've been able to control. But this is an ongoing process. Construction hasn't begun yet, and there would be an opportunity for us to review these issues further with the neighbors.
And does that include sharing the acoustical report with their acoustical engineer?
Oh, we've already done that. What we've been saying now for a while is let our acoustical engineer speak to each other. And I understand that the data, I think, and I wished it got to them Friday or it got to them Thursday, and I was out Friday. That data has been shared. To the best of my knowledge, that is everything we have. And I think the caution and what's been said throughout is, here's our acoustician. He is a respected guy. Centec is a well-regarded acoustical firm. Let them talk. If your consultant comes back with further suggestions that we can consider implementing, we're happy to look at that. So no, there's no suggestion here that we would terminate discussions in the commitment. We don't want to see the neighbors have to spend a lot of resources on acoustical studies, but it's a complicated issue, and we frankly felt for some time that we could quickly focus on the issues if the professionals spoke directly with one another. So that's where we find ourselves.
Can we address that?
Not at this time, just a second, please.
I would just say, with regard to other impact issues that are always prominent in the Commission's thinking in terms of conduct of patrons, impact on residential neighbors, and as I said earlier, I think this location the board could take note of, given the interior opportunities to deal with deliveries, trash, parking, that the impacts of this restaurant would be significantly less than nearly any other restaurant on that stretch of Mass Avenue. And we've made arrangements to have access to that interior loading dock for all of those purposes. So it really is in our view, a very good location. There is this challenge with the building, and we hope we've demonstrated that this, and particularly if the Commission has time to read the issue, there's one sentence in here in the August 6th memo where he said, because 53 dBA is so much louder than 32 dBA, the addition of 32 dBA doesn't move the needle. And what the acoustician said to us, if people are yelling at each other and someone is whispering, you don't hear the people whispering, it doesn't increase. Now, I'm not suggesting this is a whisper, and I don't want people to be offended by the metaphor or the analogy, but the science of this suggests that what's going on the roof of that building, that is creating a hum, that does occur 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is not going to be impacted by a kitchen exhaust fan that will operate only when the ovens the grill is being operated.
No questions.
Do you have any questions? And you did say in your opening statement that you have access to the parking garage as well?
Yes, we have it.
Patrons would be able to park in the garage?
Patrons could park there. We're looking at either a valet system or a direct parking, but the lease provides for that, and we shared that information. It was suggested in an earlier hearing that because of the change of the tenant mix in the building, by the way, there are still some offices in the building. My memory is quite fine. But we met with the landlord and the owner of the building, and it is true that there are a number of uses. It's interesting, there's a new cycle place, what do they call those? A spin place on the first floor of the street. Proving to be very popular, doesn't require a license, very active, nice music pounding when you walk by. These are uses permitted in this zoning district on what is the principal commercial corridor in the city of Cambridge. Mass Avenue is the place where uses such as this are permitted, encouraged, and allowed. And this building, in our view, is perfectly appropriate to accommodate a restaurant. 1 block from here, in the Bay Square condominium, there's been a restaurant for years in that location. There are a series of restaurants up and down Mass Avenue. At the base of 1105 Mass Avenue, these uses are coexisting with in the lower floors of residential buildings. So we understand the issues, and I believe firmly that the commitment here to, there was some reference to an earlier hearing, the caliber of this operation, the capital committed to it will ensure that a high level of attention will be placed on maintaining this. And the commission can take note, as it does in cases of this nature, of the experience of the operator, not in some other municipality, but less than a half a mile from this location. This operator has proved himself to be a very capable and qualified operator at the Alden Hollow Restaurant, and the records of this commission reflect that. And I believe that's a compelling evidence for the commission to consider in determining the appropriateness of a license for this particular operator at this location.
And I will add that in my brief tenure here, I don't think I've seen an applicant go through the extreme measures that your client has taken in terms of addressing neighborhood concerns. So I don't think I've seen that since I've been here. So let me ask you this. If the board were to vote to continue this until the decision hearing, which I believe is in a few weeks later on this month, I know that you talked about a timing issue. Does that mess up your timing issue? Does that blow your timing issue?
Maybe Mr. Scelfo would want to speak to that.
It's
I mean,
August 22nd.
Right, we've already filed for a one-time 45-day extension within our lease division for time to obtain a liquor license for the location. So we are at the end of that. We have a termination date on the lease and a open date on the lease that is, looming, and it takes time to, we've got to design, we've got to build, we've got more capital to raise. We have many, many hurdles, to cross to get open in time. We've made serious financial commitments. We've spent extensive resources already with this project, still potentially in jeopardy, it seems. And, I can't stress enough how willing we are to work with these people. And, in a sense, it's hard not to feel victimized by what's already a pre-existing relationship with this building. When we're merely just trying to open a restaurant here. So, I would just ask for that to be considered.
So again, if the board were to continue this to the decision hearing, does that have a detrimental effect?
Well, it does have a detrimental effect, but I understand the issue before the board, and I would only say that there are external pressures from the landlord, but as in all matters, I think the applicant will obviously have to deal with, defer to the board's wisdom on that, on the timing of this. We didn't push this to keep information away. So I know with the pressure they're facing with the landlord, we find ourselves up against a deadline in a lease auction where payments begin and so forth. So, I have great faith in the judgment of the board and have great respect for the effort and time that residents have put into this to date. And I could see why the board might feel that that effort needs to be respected as well. So we would defer to the board's judgment.
And I can only speak for myself, but I feel like the challenge as a board member is that you have a building that was a problem long before you proposed to open up a restaurant there. And I hate to penalize you for that. Again, I see you taking all the steps necessary to try to mitigate the noise that the neighbors have had to deal with. So I appreciate all of that. I appreciate the neighbors' concerns, and I appreciate what you've done to try to mitigate it. So I will call it to the board. What is the board's pleasure?
Well, Madam Chair, it seems to me that you're almost there in terms of providing the data and the information. I think just one last piece I think that potentially could resolve this whole issue. I understand the issue with respect to the extension and the lease extension, but I think for us to, or for me personally, to take action at this matter when you're this close, I think would be somewhat problematic. And I would be inclined to want to see us defer this until the decision hearing so that we have opportunities to hopefully resolve this issue. In fact, you do in fact have greater support from the neighbors because of the two engineers collaborating with one another.
And if it would help, we could, the board in terms of if the board votes in and votes to continue the matter, if a letter was sent, as we send it to you, and copy it to the landlord as well, so they understand you're not the issue, it's the board looking for additional information. you could come forward.
Yes.
And you need to state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. Brian Lesser?
Brian
Lesser. Brian Lesser.
Can you spell first and last name?
Brian, B-R-I-A-N, L-E-S-S-E-R.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing us. The only concern I would have on something like that is if we could set out what that would mean. I understand the neighbors, we've been working in contact with them for quite some time, but since the very beginning, we've asked for one thing. They have told us they have a separate sound acoustician that they'd like to work with. We have asked for their contact information from the very beginning, and we have not been given that. And all we wanted to do was connect the professionals together to go through all the data and all the information. And we've been withheld that because they would like us to provide data, which then goes to their acoustician, and then they have questions and they relay it back to me. I have to go back. It's a large waste of time. And what we've done is we provided who the sound engineer was from the very beginning. We said, please, if you have a concern, you can call them, contact them, or have your professional speak with them directly. I guess what I'm asking for is, if this is the route that we are going to take, or we're allowed to take, whether we would be able to get those professionals to meet, or to at least exchange information to provide what the total outcome was, so they feel comfortable. Our sound engineer is a resident, as you see in the memo. He lives 2 blocks from this building. He's well aware of any impact, and he has said specifically that this will not impact the residents in this area for all the information that he's provided. He said, please have them contact me directly. I've given that information over to the neighbors. I said, please reach out to them directly if you have a concern. So that's sort of where we're at now, and we're at a particular point where we're at the mercy of
We're hitting a point where we feel like no matter what we do, and no matter what the estimates, we might have, a hard time with people's needs.
So, with that being said, I see several neighbors with their hands up who apparently want to address that. I will allow one neighbor, you guys can figure it out amongst yourself, one neighbor, 1 minute to at least address that, and whether or not you will have the engineers talk to one another. So, Mr. Wellens, is that it?
Mr. Wellens.
If you could please.
That's right. We want the acousticians to talk to each other.
Okay.
After, excuse me, our acoustician has had a chance to look over the material and evaluate it independently of the other acoustician. Do you understand that? Does that make sense to you?
Not totally to me.
Okay. The idea is that this should be an independent, you want an independent...
This shouldn't be like you show my hand and I'll show you mine, If there's a fan and a piece of equipment that they can look up online and independently verify the decibels, the speed and so forth, I think that someone could do it in a, collaborative method, not necessarily you do yours, I'll come back and go back. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but my experience is the opposite. My experience is when I go into a situation, I work directly with somebody, we together fall into a certain path. The path has already been outlined by their, created by their acoustical engineer. What we want, and we've said from the very beginning, we made it very clear, we want our acoustical engineer to get the inputs that the other fellow used, all that he used, that's all. Evaluate them, draw some initial conclusions, and then talk to the guy so they're on the same level. Right now, our guy will be down here and their guy will be up here. They talked about doing this in 30 minutes. Brian had to send us an email saying, if our 2 guys got together, they could solve it all in 30 minutes. Our acoustical engineer has said he's going to need maybe 8 hours, maybe a little less, to do the analysis himself. So what we're talking about doing is getting them to talk to each other, absolutely, once they're on the same level of understanding. Otherwise, our guy is going to, are his decisions going to be independent? Are they credible? We don't want to get into that. We just want them to start out at this level.
You know what I'm saying? We don't want to play cloak and dagger.
No, it's not cloak and dagger at all. All we're doing is asking
We have to evaluate systems all the time, and you know, if you're referencing a certain fire pump and a certain speed, and you get that information to the other, two people can independently give you an opinion on that.
Well, then what we want is for our guy to independently give an opinion to us and then go talk to their guy. I'm not expecting them to disagree. I'm actually expecting them to agree. But we want our fellow to come to this, to come to the data with independence.
And that's what he said.
And make those judgments.
And that's what he said.
Well, Madam Chair, I, with all due respect, I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, it sounds as if there's been a very healthy exchange here, but in the 11th hour, and I don't question anyone's motives, there's a suggestion that information is being withheld, and then on our side, we're thinking, well, give us the name of who you're using. We're not saying he can't do as an independent, but why can't we at least have an understanding of who you're using and our guy? And I don't think, I mean, I would presume that whoever they're hiring has enough integrity that he can't be persuaded by our professional. And all we've been saying, and I think this has led to a little, in the final days here, a little sense of mistrust of, well, we won't tell you who our acquisition is until you give us the data. We said, well, we thought the data was in the April 6th memo, or the August 6th memo, but it didn't have. So we sent spec sheets on Monday, we sent cut sheets, all the type of stuff, and said, well, it's Monday, but you know, the hearing's Tuesday, but maybe they could still talk. Maybe they could at least begin a dialogue. And there's, again, I don't want to appear critical, but there's been an unwillingness to get there, and I respect and understand Mr. Wellman's point. They want their independent analysis. Well, let me suggest that our acquisition is as independent as theirs is. The firm is well respected, and whatever decision the commission makes, I think with the point being raised by Mr. Lesser is, we're hoping we could get to the point of rather narrowing this issue quickly, because it's been a little, perhaps, mystifying on both ends as to why we haven't been able to put these people together sooner than this moment.
But what I can tell you is that if our guy gets the data, the remaining data that he hasn't gotten yet, he has estimated that he can complete the work by Friday, which is, I think, well within your time
So,
period.
I'm sorry, excuse me, if we can just be clear, what data is it that he does not have? What is he missing?
He's specified, he's looked over the, well, first of all, let's draw that. This is a guy who said last week.
I just need to know, what data is he missing?
He doesn't know entirely at this point because he hasn't had time to do his analysis completely. He has already told, and we've sent to you, the data that he thinks is missing just from what he's looked at.
What would your opposition be to giving the name and putting the two of them together?
I would like our man to make an independent decision based on the data that the first fellow used. And then I would like them to talk. I don't understand why there's a problem with that.
I don't understand why they can't talk now and they can't work collaboratively at the same time in the same direction. They're independent bodies and they make independent decisions. But you got to make sure they're both talking about the same apples and oranges so they can make their decision on the subject at hand.
What I said at the beginning is still true. Their fellow's already gone through all the material and understood it. Okay, so he's mastered the data. Our guy comes in at the ground floor. He needs time to look over the data and understand it. At which point he can talk. Does this not make sense?
No, this is not making sense to me at all. Not at all.
It's very much like a doctor's second opinion.
But you have to know, the subject has to be available to both parties so we know what we're talking about before we have a second opinion. I don't understand this at all. It makes me very leery about this whole process.
You don't understand the idea of an independent opinion?
Absolutely I do, but you need to have the facts of what we're talking about and what the subject is and what the information is, and then both parties can make a reasonable determination based upon the common
information. Are you asking me what the specific data are that are required?
Yeah, or get together so they both can ask each other, I'm missing this on the RPM. I want to know how many centrifugal turns a minute. What model are you specifying? What's the baffle on it? This has to be done between the two of them so they're both on the same page. And they're both evaluating independently the same set of subjects.
The first guy's already done his evaluation, but basically you're saying if we agree that our guy can talk to their guy,
sure,
then it's, at any point, you don't have any problem, you wouldn't have any problem with him spending time mastering the material and then calling the other guy and saying, I don't get it. Something's missing here. That would be okay with me.
Let's just get the information out so they both can evaluate.
The first fellow's already done his evaluation.
So what? It's like saying the first doctor making an opinion, and you want a second opinion. The second person needs to know the subject and the person that you render a decision that the first one did.
My prostate cancer doctors never talked to me.
Okay,
All
so
right, all right.
I'm done with the conversation. I think we just need to call a vote, and that's it. Based on the exchange that we just had, I'm not 100% sure that even if they get together and talk, that we would even wait to the end of the month for a decision hearing, that they would still be on the same page.
Not even.
Comments?
I'd like to give them an opportunity at least to see if they can actually collaborate and reconcile this issue, if they come this far.
I'll entertain a motion then.
I make a motion that the matter be deferred until the decision hearing.
With a friendly amendment then? So if we defer the matter until the decision hearing, it would be specifically to allow the two different engineers to have a conversation. And when it comes back before the board on, Ms. Lent, the date again?
August 27th.
On August 27th for a vote. No further discussion.
With the amendment.
So a motion's been made with a friendly amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.